I remember back to my year 12 days and even during uni exams, the stress you would see on everyone's face was like incredible. I'm a big believer that you need stress to perform. You see Olympic athletes just before they're about to jump into the pool and you can see that it is that, whether it's stress or the nerves or the excitement, it could be, all those words could mean that. But I know that is an element of success. Can you talk about how we manage stress so it's a positive thing and how we can actually gain from that?
The idea of stress is that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it has a negative impact on you. I think an overlooked aspect is that if you want to live a fulfilling life, you need to have stress, because the human sensation of fulfillment is often derived from overcoming a challenge. The definition of challenge is relative to what your capability is. We don't find fulfillment and satisfaction from doing no one's sitting there tying their shoelaces 12 hours a day and feeling, I have such a satisfying, fulfilling life. So because we're trying to pick a path of fulfillment, we're picking a path of challenge, which means there's going to be stress. But we have to recognize this is the stress we chose. This is the stress we wanted. There is always the option to just remove the stress by removing the challenge. You can. Sometimes people say, oh no, I can't. You can, you may just not want to deal with the consequences of that decision. So you might say, my job is really stressful. Then leave your job. That is an option, right? In most countries, there's no massive repercussion from leaving your job. You could get work somewhere else that has a more supportive culture or whatever that you feel is going to be relevant for you. Or you may change professions. But if you're not willing to do that, then you have to be honest with yourself. I have the option, however, the work involved in finding a new job or whatever it is, that is something that I would like less than trying to just deal with the stress of this job. It doesn't mean that you have to feel great about the stress of the job, but you have to understand that that is the stress that you chose. In some cases, you find, you know what, I could deal with the stress, but at the end of the day, the outcome is not even worth it for me because I'm not even finding it fulfilling to begin with. In that case, it's the stress you chose, but now that you have tried to engage in it a bit more, we're realizing, you know what, this doesn't really align with me. Even if I could manage the stress in a perfect world where I wasn't stressed but I could still achieve the outcome, I'm not really excited about that. In that case, we've learned a little bit more about ourselves, we've learned about our work. There's a realignment that needs to happen. So you can leave and pick a new type of stress, a new type of challenge. There's a lot of barriers and hesitancy to that because of the sunk cost fallacy, where I put in so much time, so much effort in this already, then pivot to something else and something new. Well, look, again, you got to pick your stress somehow. Are you going to deal with the stress of doing work that's unfulfilling and unsustainable? Or are you going to deal with the stress of trying to create a path for yourself and something new? For me, leaving medicine after having, $100,000 plus a student loan, plus, the huge, locked in career and 7 years at university, publications in medicine, to go from that to say, okay, I'm just going to go through entrepreneurship and education, where I had I had little formal qualification in education at the time. That was a big choice, but for me it made perfect sense because I'd rather deal with the stress of entrepreneurship and education because it's the one that I find the most alignment with. And on a daily basis, whenever I feel that stress, I can see it in a way as, this is a side effect of the challenge. This is what I wanted. And if I don't want that anymore, I'm always free to make a different decision. So I think there is a lot of empowerment to viewing stress as something that actually is in your control.
Let's talk about burnout and what's your tips on that?
Yeah, so again, burnout, big topic. I'm not going to be able to do it full justice, but there is this thing called the burnout cycle. You never get burnt out on your first rodeo. You get burnt out on your 183rd rodeo. So the first tip is recognize when you're on the path to burnout, because it's always easier to change things when you're doing that. So the path to burnout means there is a high amount of effort. There's a high reliance on being very motivated in order to achieve a certain outcome. If that combination occurs, then that's a recipe for burnout, because motivation inherently is not something that should be depended on sort of on a daily basis. If you're waking up every day and you require motivation to get out of bed, then that is going to fizzle out at a certain point. And yes, you might take your strategic sick day every now and again because you need that sleep in. However, that's just not going to be sustainable because number one, you're going to run out of sick days. And number two, at a certain point, it's not going to be enough. Everyone knows the feeling of going on leave and then coming back after like 3-4 weeks sometimes, and then coming back and being like, oh, I'm fresh, I'm rejuvenated, and then 3 days in, they're like, oh no, I need to leave again.
I need another holiday.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you don't even feel refreshed. You get to the end of the month and you think, right, I'm now in a position where I'm ready to start relaxing, and then you need another month. These are all signs that we're on that path to burnout. So number one, remove the motivation dependency aspect of it. So that could be about changing processes, changing your systems, changing staffing, changing structures, whatever it is. Think, what is it that requires me to be so motivated to overcome these challenges? Put yourself in a position where your daily work is not dependent on motivation. Number one, either through automations or processes or technology, or number two, through habits, number three, through delegation, or number four, think about restructuring the process within a task that you still need to do in a way that it generates motivation because it is inherently enjoyable. So if we're doing a task that we're inherently enjoying, it creates more motivation for us rather than pulling that motivation out of us. We want that motivation to be a precious resource because push will come to shove one day. And if you are in rock bottom when that happens, you will not be able to withstand it. That motivation should be guarded as a precious resource, just like how we try to guard our time and our free time and other things that are precious to us. So think about what can generate motivation for us. If we have to do something, is there a way that we can change the way we do it so it's more motivating? This happens a lot with learning. A lot of people find learning dreary and boring and tedious. Actually, the human brain loves learning. What you probably hate is studying. So that might be changing the way you study so it's more authentically learning. Therefore, you would find more intrinsic enjoyment in the process. Now you no longer need motivation. In fact, it's the opposite. You want to do it because you feel that it is motivating.
Justin, I've got a question on productivity. There's a video that you've done which is awesome where you talk about productivity and when productivity is efficient and when productivity is not efficient. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer that productivity in itself is not inherently a good thing, and that no one should be seeking to become more productive for the sake of being more productive. I consider myself as a highly productive person. I do not see myself as being like I am a productive person. I don't associate my identity with being productive. I don't associate my value or my worth with being productive. Productivity should always be what are the steps that you can take and your ability to take those steps getting you to the goal that you want. And it always has to be personally relevant. Productivity is nothing more than producing the outcome that you want, and the outcome you want is completely up to you. If you want to sit by the beach and just chill out, then you have to be productive at doing that. And sometimes it's not a matter of just going to the beach and chilling out. Sometimes it's a matter of, well, what can I do to put myself in the position where I'm able to do that and not have to stress and worry about these other things. If what you want to do is, I want to, give up my material possessions and live in the mountains and meditate for the rest of my life, power to you, do that. In that case, to be productive, all you need to do is quit your job, sell your material. It's very, very easy to do that. So there's this sort of toxic productivity that people get really caught up in the idea of just being productive and just constantly going for the sake of it without taking the time to think whether that is what you really want out of your life. You never want to be in a position where, yes, you're succeeding in your career, but then the cost of that was against the very purpose. There's all these stories about, you've got kids and then you're working so hard to provide for your family, and then you turn around and you think, well, my family is miserable because I'm never at home, Well, then what was the point? You're actually being unproductive.
Yeah.
Right? So I think productivity, because it's one of those things in this capitalistic world, right? It wraps up our whole lives. And it's possible for your entire life to, without realizing it, shift towards that or producing, being productive for the sake of being productive. But we have to, for our own sake, think about what is it that we want and then gear productivity towards that. And sometimes your boss will hate you for it. Sometimes your colleagues won't agree with it, but it's your life. And that's what, that's what productivity is about. And I'm a strong believer in that.